A corpse washes ashore, precisely where a fisherman's shrimp trap was set, as if someone wanted it to be discovered. While the police believe the case is closed, a female agent discovers a series of unusual clues, leading to a deserted island. Only then does she realize she's up against a more sophisticated fake death scheme than any case she's ever investigated. This woman is an agent of the British Secret Intelligence Service. She has an IQ of 190, is fluent in 6 languages, and is frequently deployed overseas, making her enemies everywhere. Therefore, she must always be on guard against assassination. She has a particularly intense passion for murder cases. Because she's made so many enemies, she eventually becomes entangled in a kidnapping and captivity. Sylvia and her sister's family live in the rural area of Panicale. She's used to days of breathtakingly dramatic victories. Now the peaceful life makes her feel somewhat out of place. Her habits are hard to break. She is drawn into a complex case. A local man named Luigi, unable to bear the pressure, leaves his wife and dies tragically. The church holds a grand funeral for him. His wife, Vittoria, unexpectedly slaps Franco, a man who had done many good deeds. He and his wife founded an organization to help gambling addicts overcome their addiction. Luigi's debts were due to gambling. Everyone knows Franco had always helped Luigi, so why does Vittoria hate him so much? Sylvia's boyfriend is Giovanni, a police detective. Due to their busy work schedules, they rarely spend time together. Today they finally have a date, but he is called away by an urgent phone call. Franco's body is discovered in the community cafeteria office by a local padre named Padre and a woman named Mara. The time of death is estimated to be between 6 and 6:30 p.m. the day after Luigi's funeral. The first suspect the police considered was Vittoria, with whom he had a long-standing feud. In her room was a mannequin with his name carved on it. There were multiple stab wounds near the heart. His cause of death was also due to stab wounds to the heart, resulting in excessive blood loss. However, if it were a premeditated crime, the killers certainly wouldn't have practiced at home and left the evidence exposed for the police to discover. Giovanni found the murder weapon, a dinner knife, in the community cafeteria. It was meticulously cleaned, with no obvious traces of foul play. Currently, there was no concrete evidence to convict Vittoria. Taking advantage of the police's lapse in vigilance, Sylvia used the excuse of taking Vittoria home to question her further. She had an older brother, named Raimondo, who managed the tailor shop inherited from their parents. Vittoria and her husband both worked at the shop, but their income was too low to cover their basic living expenses. That's also why her husband fell into gambling, and once you're hooked on a bad habit, it's very difficult to break free. According to Vittoria's friend, she also owned a portion of the tailor shop. Initially, she intended to sell it to help her husband pay off his debts, but Raimondo objected. Perhaps unable to bear the burden of life or too ashamed to face Vittoria, her husband chose to do something so foolish. Padre could testify to Vittoria's alibi, stating that at 6 p.m. yesterday, when he was preparing to leave for work, she was still praying in church and didn't have enough time to commit the crime. The community dining hall regularly held a charity party, so most residents attended. Besides Mara, Sylvia also met a church boy named Gabriel. They had met once before in church. Gabriel seemed like a very well-behaved child. He would be an adult next year. While the party was underway, a guest unexpectedly appeared. The woman who worked as a maid at the party received a call from her husband and hurriedly left. Gabriel followed her. These two seemed to be hiding something unusual. Ramona opened a hair salon on the corner. Sylvia, posing as a customer, came to investigate. At first, Ramona enthusiastically praised Franco, saying that everyone in the village respected him. The charity he established had brought hope to many poor families. But when Sylvia inquired further about the charity, Ramona's expression immediately changed. She didn't even dry Sylvia's hair before chasing her out. This unusual behavior only increased Sylvia's suspicion. From then on, she observed the hair salon daily. Finally, she discovered Ramona's strange behavior. Occasionally, she would drive to a town 100 kilometers away from the village. There, she owned a villa that she and Franco had jointly purchased. Ramona's small hair salon and Franco's modest income were completely insufficient to afford a villa worth tens of millions of euros. Moreover, they were also involved in charity work. So where did the money come from? To receive leniency, Mara confessed some crucial clues to the case. The night before the murder, she overheard Gabriel and Franco having a heated argument in the community dining hall. Giovanni immediately led his men to the church to apprehend Gabriel, but he reacted quickly. The narrow village roads made it difficult for the police car to move, so they soon lost sight of him. At the same time, while Ramona was away, Sylvia secretly broke into the villa. She found it filled with antiques, indicating that the two had spent a considerable amount of money. There were also 2 suitcases in their bedroom. Was Ramona preparing to flee? What was she she afraid of? In a secret compartment of the desk drawer, Sylvia discovered a notebook listing the donors who had contributed to the charity over the years. Some donors contributed as little as €3,000, while others contributed as much as €50,000. Sylvia immediately took a picture of it as evidence and put the notebook back in its place. But just then, a woman rushed in and blocked her path. She quickly smashed a jar and hurried away from the scene. If this was just a normal donation, why were Ramona and Franco hiding it like this? While looking at the list, Sylvia saw a familiar name, Mara. From that, she learned the real reason Mara was arrested and uncovered the dirty secret behind Franco's hypocritical facade as a model philanthropist. Mara had a 19-year-old daughter who was pregnant out of wedlock. This was a very shameful thing in the local area. Once exposed, it would lead to lifelong contempt. Franco seized on this weakness and used it to blackmail Mara into donating money to his charity. Because she had no money, Mara risked stealing from the community cafeteria. But the police would eventually discover this. And Mara wasn't the only victim. The list recorded mostly victims of blackmail. Sylvia reported this crucial clue to Giovanni. The police immediately brought a search warrant and seized the ledger from the drawer. Ramona still tried to justify herself, claiming it was all Franco's doing and that she knew absolutely nothing. At the same time, Sylvia accepted Padre's request to find information about Gabriel, who was in hiding. He was likely hiding in the ruins of a large, ancient church. Therefore, she had to enlist the help of her close friend, Rafaela, who ran an ice cream shop to conceal her identity as a high-ranking agent. Inside the shop was a secret office. Rafaela was excellent at gathering information and tracking down clues. Sylvia used the drone Rafaela provided to find Gabriel. Soon, she spotted the motorcycle parked there and apprehended him. Although Gabriel wasn't the one who murdered Franco, he knew he would be added to the list of suspects, which is why he panicked and tried to escape. He had a clandestine relationship with a married woman. It was the woman who worked at the community cafeteria. Her husband had a terrible temper, and if he found out, he would surely act ruthlessly. Franco exploited this weakness to blackmail Gabriel into donating money, threatening to reveal the secret to the world if he didn't. Gabriel would not only lose his reputation, but also be expelled from the church. During the time the crime occurred, Gabriel was always with this woman. They could testify for each other, proving he didn't have enough time to commit the crime. Gabriel revealed a crucial detail to Sylvia. Padre had testified to the police that he left the church at 6 o'clock while Vittoria was still praying. But in reality, Gabriel saw Padre leave the church around 5:30. This proves he was lying. But why did he do that? Was he trying to create an alibi for Vittoria? Vittoria and her husband had no significant assets. Franco not only didn't help them, but he also used other methods to control them. He pretended to want to help Vittoria pay off her husband's debts. He lent them money several times at exorbitant interest rates, up to 50%. Therefore, they had to consider selling their house to pay off the debts. Just before Luigi's funeral, Franco warned Vittoria that even though her husband was dead, she still had to repay the debt. Her hatred grew, and she resolved to kill him. She even went to church many times to pray for the courage she needed. But unexpectedly, someone else acted before her. The final problem was that Ramona stubbornly refused to say anything. Giovanni also couldn't find out where the money Franco forced others to donate had been used. At the crucial moment, Sylvia stepped in. She asked Rafaela to investigate Ramona's family's finances. Finally, they found a breakthrough. Ramona's mother owned a bar near the villa. Annual revenue exceeded €500,000. This was truly unbelievable. Sylvia recognized the bar owner as the woman who had stopped her at the villa the day before. After some thought, Sylvia connected the bar's profits with the donations. That money couldn't be used openly. Therefore, Ramona's mother's bar was the ideal place to launder money. But Sylvia didn't believe that Ramona killed her husband to get all the money. She had guessed who the real killer was. When the believers came to church to pray, Padre was often nearby listening to their confessions. Those who had been coerced confessed Franco's crimes. With his compassion and empathy for human suffering, Padre had long considered Franco a thorn in his side. Recently, Padre discovered he had a terminal illness and didn't have long to live, so he felt he needed to do something. After hearing Vittoria's murder plan, he acted first. What made Sylvia suspicious was Gabriel's statement that he saw Padre leaving the church at 5:30. Everyone thought Padre was lying to create an alibi for Vittoria. But if Padre said he saw Vittoria at 6 a.m., not only she but he himself wouldn't be suspected. Wouldn't he be maybe creating an alibi for himself as well? The case was closed. As Sylvia was returning to her peaceful life in the countryside, she received a new assignment from the 16 Intelligence Bureau. This time, she had to pose as Lee's personal assistant and attend a lakeside party. Lee and her husband had been suspected of involvement with a rebel organization. After her husband's death, she became the one in power. Their current mansion was a secret base. Her daughter, Zoe, was a spendthrift who had just been released from a rehabilitation center and had arrived at the mansion by helicopter the day before. This party was mainly for the Hector family. Old Hector was about to turn 60. He attended with his daughter Luna and son-in-law Ricardo, but it was clear Ricardo was closer to Zoe. There seems to be an unusual relationship between the two of them. Another man named Chris also attended the party. He was reportedly an antiques appraiser. Lee had invited him because she was short on money and wanted to sell some antiques to get through her financial difficulties. The next day, Mr. Hector didn't show up. The maid received a call from a local fisherman named Piero. He said that while catching lobsters, he discovered a dead body next to a lobster trap. The police brought photos of the scene to confirm with Ricardo and Lee. Both confirmed that the deceased was Mr. Hector. They speculated that he had been involved in an accident while swimming that morning. He was a former finance minister who had been accused by the press of embezzlement. MI6 considered his death suspicious and ordered Sylvia to continue the investigation. Zoe took Ricardo to the police station to cooperate with the investigation. Luna slept upstairs, while Chris went out for a walk. Despite the serious incident, Lee decided to cancel the party and give Sylvia a day off. Sylvia inquired about Piero's workplace. Upon arriving, she learned that Lee's maid was Piero's mother. Because Piero had been to prison several times for theft, she didn't dare tell the truth to her employer. Sylvia returned to the mansion and unexpectedly found Ricardo and Zoe being intimate outside. She didn't intend to interfere in other people's private affairs. She was about to go inside when Chris approached her and struck up a conversation. His strange enthusiasm aroused her professional instincts. She sneaked into his room and found his identification papers. They looked normal, but there was something unusual about them. She searched the entire room and finally discovered another document hidden in the wall clock. Both were Chris's papers, but one bore the name William. How could one person have two different identities? Chris noticed someone breaking into his room. Before Sylvia could escape, she was forced out onto the balcony. He noticed but only smiled and didn't expose her. The autopsy results showed that Hector died from drowning. There were ligature marks on his wrists, ankles, legs, and neck, indicating he was tied up and pushed into the water. Everyone in the mansion became a suspect. Hector's only daughter, Luna, and her husband, Ricardo, ran a company together. Ricardo was a key figure and had a good relationship with Hector. It was rumored that Hector had left a will, bequeathing all his assets to Luna. If the murder was for the purpose of seizing the assets, she had no motive. Ricardo was Luna's former tennis teammate and came from a humble background. His ambiguous relationship with Zoe suggested he wasn't a direct listener. Zoe liked to meddle in the mansion's affairs. Sylvia planted listening devices everywhere and overheard that Lee had once wanted to sell the mansion to Hector. This greatly displeased Zoe. Chris claimed to be an art collector, but Sylvia subtly sensed that it was just a facade. Giovanni and the police searched everywhere, but still couldn't find any useful clues. Once again, they had to ask Sylvia for help. Lee happened to see Sylvia and Chris being affectionate. Suspicion arose in her heart. That night, when everyone was asleep, Sylvia prepared to go to the investigation office. Just as she was about to touch the painting on the wall, someone covered her mouth from behind. It was Chris. He took her to the storage room and revealed his true identity. Both the names Chris and William were fake. His real name was Henry, Sylvia's biological father who had been missing for many years. He recognized her the first time he saw her. He knew she was on a mission, so he didn't dare reveal their relationship. Behind the painting was Lee's safe. Touching it would trigger the alarm. Henry couldn't let Sylvia risk her life, so he had to reveal his identity to save her. This shock left her stunned. She wanted to call her sister, but it was late at night, and her sister was probably asleep. She kept this secret to herself all night and couldn't sleep. The next day, the police summoned her to the station again. She recognized the body at a glance. It wasn't Hector. Although the age and build were similar, the nose was completely different. Hector had a small scar on his face. During the examination of the body, Ricardo refused to tell the truth, whether he had mistaken the body for someone else, was hiding something, or who the real man in the morgue was. The police's excessive attention to Sylvia aroused Lee's suspicion, especially after she witnessed Chris whispering to Sylvia. This only reinforced her belief that this woman was not simple. After the murder, Luna was so distraught that she didn't eat or drink for 2 days. She was constantly in tears, appearing genuinely heartbroken over Hector's death. In contrast, Zoe and Ricardo remained carefree, enjoying the beach as if they hadn't just experienced a life-or-death tragedy. The maid provided Sylvia with a new clue. After Hector's death, Ricardo paid Piero a large sum of money to help him catch crayfish. Furthermore, he told Piero the exact location of the crayfish traps. The area with the most crayfish was also where Hector's body was found. That area had a small island. When Lee accidentally broke the desk lamp in her room, she discovered a hidden listening device inside. Although there was no clear evidence to suggest Sylvia was the culprit, Lee, out of caution, decided to fire her. Removing her disguise brought her relief. She returned home, took off her wig, and enjoyed rare moments of peace. However, she couldn't forget the unanswered questions surrounding the murder. According to the maid, Ricardo knew exactly where Piero's crayfish traps were located. Now that the body wasn't Hector's, where was he? It could be concluded that Ricardo was also involved in this plan. They deliberately placed Hector's fake body near the shrimp trap so that Piero could easily spot it and report it to the police as soon as possible. Why would they do that? Sylvia and Giovanni went to the island to confirm that the shrimp traps used to tie the body were placed near the shore. If Ricardo hadn't requested it, Piero wouldn't have fished in that area. Crossing the island's vast forest, they discovered a wooden hut. The floorboards were rotting and creaked. Inside, scattered in the garden, were bottles of the same kind of liquor Ricardo usually drank. A name, Senna, was written all over the wall. Could this be the real identity of the man in the morgue? In any case, all the signs pointed to Hector's fake death being a deliberate plan. Near the hut, there were also traces of a helicopter landing. Zoe had returned to the mansion by helicopter the day before the crime. This further reinforced the suspicion that she was also involved in this fake death scheme. Sylvia had pieced together all the clues. She returned to the mansion and asked the most important question: who benefited most from this plan? Naturally, it was Hector. He was previously accused of embezzling a large sum of money from the treasury before the finance minister. Once he loses government protection, he's certain to go to jail. The police also discovered that a thief named Senna was released from prison last week. He closely resembled Hector and was chosen as a scapegoat. Ricardo, envious of Luna's inferior status, secretly had an affair with Zoe. He needed money and wanted to climb the social ladder. Zoe, on the other hand, wanted to keep the mansion. These two, along with Hector, formed an alliance. Ricardo had someone kidnap Senna and used Zoe's helicopter to transport him to the island. Hector then murdered Senna and placed his body near a shrimp trap for Piero to discover. The helicopter pilot was later arrested and became a witness, incriminating Ricardo and Zoe. The kidnapper was also arrested for kidnapping and murder. At this point, those who were once deeply involved turned against each other, trying to escape punishment. A dramatic scene unfolded, with Luna being the most hurt. She was betrayed by the two people closest to her. Although Hector had never cared about Luna's feelings, she couldn't bear to see her father slide down a path of crime. Finally, she revealed to Sylvia that Hector had a house in the Philippines. This was the only place he could hide it. The seemingly complicated case was finally closed. MI6 temporarily didn't assign Sylvia any new tasks, so she took her father to her sister Isabel's house. For over 40 years since the two sisters were born, Henry had been missing. He had never fulfilled his responsibilities as a father. He only appeared for a few short hours before their mother's death, and then disappeared again. When Isabel saw her father again, she showed no joy. Isabel even reminded Sylvia that Henry was always getting into trouble. If she stayed near him, she must be extremely careful. At first, Sylvia didn't pay much attention to this warning, but when she returned home, she discovered a suspicious motorcycle loitering around the area. It was the same motorcycle that had appeared near her several times in the past few days. She immediately realized she was being followed. She asked Rafaela to investigate the license plate. While waiting for a response, she heard a car horn blaring outside, as if the driver had fainted and accidentally pressed the horn. She ran out to see what was happening and was grabbed from behind by a chain around her neck. Her cries for help startled Henry, who was in his room, and chased after the truck, but he only managed to see the truck speed away. Sylvia's phone was left on the ground. Who would dare abduct someone so brazenly in broad daylight? Henry and Isabel immediately called the police. At the same time, they received a call from Rafaela. She had traced the origin of the motorcycle, but wasn't ready to reveal it over the phone. She arranged to meet Henry at the ice cream shop at 2 p.m. Giovanni led a team to the scene to recover Sylvia's phone and bring it back to headquarters for decoding. Henry remembered the truck was a white Fiat Ducato. Checking the license plate, he discovered the truck had been reported stolen an hour earlier. Recently, Henry had a dispute with a client over money. The client even hired someone to spy on his family. The police suspect the abduction was a threat from the client. But Sylvia has a lot to hide and has certainly made many enemies. Who is the real culprit? Meanwhile, Sylvia is tied up in the basement. She vaguely sees the face of the abductor. She asks in astonishment, "Isn't he dead?" The police and Henry split up. One side goes to meet Henry's client to verify if he is involved in the disappearance. Henry stays at Sylvia's house to search for useful clues. He retrieves an emergency weapons kit hidden in the fireplace. Although he has been retired for many years and hasn't touched a gun, he quickly regains his old reflexes. At 2 p.m., Henry meets Rafaela at the ice cream shop. She says many local hotels offer car rental services. The motorcycle was registered at the Sereno Hotel. At this time, Giovanni has met Henry's client. She said he had sold her a valuable painting, but the money hadn't been transferred yet. She thought he wouldn't pay, so she sent someone to follow him. But it was all just threats. He never actually did anything. Henry followed Rafaela's lead to the Sereno Hotel. He managed to take a picture of the motorbike rental man. He had never met him before. Therefore, this could be Sylvia's enemy. From his cold demeanor and professional training, it was clear he was extremely dangerous. If the police got too involved, Sylvia could be killed immediately. Isabel volunteered to infiltrate the hotel to investigate. She carefully applied makeup, pretending to be a returning guest, inquiring about motorbike rentals. She quickly memorized the suspect's room number. She stole the master key from the housekeeping staff. Based on the photo Henry sent, she realized the kidnapper was in a room with his girlfriend. When the two went out, she sneaked into the room and installed a listening device. His girlfriend returned because she'd forgotten her phone. Isabel quickly hid under the bed. She had to endure the disgust of the two of them. Luckily, the girl quickly went to look up some information online and left. Only then did Isabel quietly leave the room. She completed her mission by a hair's breadth. Although Henry had retired many years ago, he still maintained close contact with his former colleagues. He asked them to investigate the kidnapper's true identity. It turned out to be an extremely dangerous and difficult individual to deal with. At the same time, Sylvia woke up from her coma. She was imprisoned in a dark basement where no sunlight could reach her, and her cries for help were in vain. She had to use a lot of strength to untie the iron chains binding her hands. She had intended to use her earrings to untie the wire binding her feet. But at the crucial moment, the basement door burst open. She was forced to pretend she was still bound and retreat to a corner. When she opened her eyes and saw her kidnapper, she immediately recognized him as Garam, a former British military intelligence officer. Not long ago, she received intelligence that he had died in a prison fight, but it turned out he faked his death to escape. Before going to prison, Garam had a partner named Sabine. The money was kept at her house, but now both she and the money have disappeared without a trace. Such skill could only be achieved by a secret agent. Therefore, Garam suspected Sabine was also an intelligence agent. He believed Sylvia had conspired with Sabine to get him imprisoned in order to seize the money. Taking advantage of Garam's departure, Sylvia picked up the earrings and untied the ropes binding her feet. The basement was surrounded by iron bars on all four sides, like a prison cell. A padlock hung on the door. Sylvia saw the oil lamp Garam had left behind, and an idea struck her. Lockpicking was easy for her. Using her underwear to hook the oil lamp towards herself, she untied the metal wire and easily opened the padlock. But the basement door was locked tight. No matter how hard she banged, it was useless. The bucket was too big, so she had no choice but to return to her original position and pretend nothing had happened. Just then, the basement door opened again. Sylvia quickly tied up Sabine's hands and feet and pretended nothing had occurred. Garam brought food and water, but Sylvia resolutely refused his charity. To get him to leave quickly, she admitted that she had been investigating Sabine for a long time and revealed all the true information about her. Before leaving, Garam even poured out the bottle of water he had brought. Only when his teeth disappeared down the stairs did Sylvia pick up the bottle and drink it all in one gulp. Then she used a sharpened piece of metal to remove the wooden planks. But then came another desperate attempt. Behind the wooden planks was an iron fence. She had no way to escape. The police finally tracked down the truck. Garam was very careful. The truck's frame had been burned. Even if DNA had been left behind, it had been completely destroyed. The abandoned car was in a rural border area near the highway. The police had begun a comprehensive search of the area, but Henry didn't trust Giovanni at all. He had his own way of investigating. At this time, Garam and his girlfriend were still at the hotel. Because he had to monitor Sylvia at all times, their locations were certainly not far apart. While Garam was away, Isabel struck up a conversation with his girlfriend. After a while, she learned that they would be leaving the hotel tomorrow night. This indicated that Garam would definitely try to deal with Sylvia tonight or tomorrow morning. Henry and Isabel were monitoring near the hotel when they overheard Garam telling his girlfriend that he would be going hiking tomorrow morning. As soon as dawn broke, he indeed began to act. Isabel got out of the car and called Henry to let him know Garam's whereabouts. He had stolen a bread delivery van from the hotel. Henry immediately followed him, but lost track of him at a bend in the road. A moment later, Sylvia heard a noise from the basement door. She carefully hid in the shadows. Taking advantage of Garam's distraction, she tried to escape. Unfortunately, he grabbed her ankle and pulled her back. After investigating Sabine, based on the information Sylvia provided, he discovered it was all a lie. Despite facing danger, Sylvia refused to tell the truth about Sabine. What kind of relationship did they have? Sylvia didn't answer Garam's question. She immediately fought back and fled. Gunshots rang out behind her incessantly. When they reached an open area, Garam prepared to fire again, but the gunshot rang out and he fell instead. Luckily, Henry arrived in time to save Sylvia. At the same time, Isabel and her family arrived. Following Henry's location data, Garam died by gunshot. Naturally, an investigation into those involved in the crime was unavoidable. Henry didn't want his secrets exposed, so he prepared to leave for Manchester. Once again, he disappeared from the lives of his two daughters. After those life-or-death moments, all distance between them vanished. Sylvia and Isabel will spend their remaining days hoping for Henry's return. The film ends here. Thank you for watching, goodbye, and see you again.